Introduction. 13. Nominal definition of logic. Irrational animals are moved to their acts by a determinate instinct of their nature. Man is directed in his acts by the judgment of reason. But the judgment of reason is indeterminate as regards the things with which it deals. Therefore man has need of different arts in order that he perform his acts with order and ease. For an art is nothing other than a direction or rule which determines reason, and by which reason directs man's acts by determinate means to their proper end. But reason can direct not only the acts or operations of other faculties, but also its own operations. Hence, just as reason, in reasoning about manual arts, discovers the art of architecture, or the art of carpentry, by which man can exercise his acts with order and ease, so also, in reasoning about its own acts, it discovers the art by which man advances with order, ease, and correctness in the very act of reason. This art is called logic. Hence logic may be called the art of arts, because it directs us in our acts of reason, from which all arts derive. Logic is called rational science, or science of reason, not only because it proceeds in conformity with reason, this is common to all arts, but because it is concerned with the acts or operations of reason itself as its proper matter. 14. The three operations of the intellect. Logic deals with the acts or operations of the intellect. To distinguish between the operations of the intellect, we must observe that reason or the human intellect does not come all at once to a perfect knowledge of things, but proceeds little by little from a knowledge of known truths to a knowledge of unknown truths. The operation by which this transition is made is called reasoning. Example: every corporeal being is corruptible, but man is a corporeal being. Therefore, man is corruptible. But reasoning presupposes another intellectual operation by which the intellect assents to the enunciations or propositions on which the act of reasoning depends. This operation is called judgment. Judgment presupposes another intellectual operation by which the intellect knows what is expressed by the terms of a proposition. For instance, that the intellect asserts to the proposition, every corporeal being is corruptible, it must first know what a corporeal being is and what a corruptible being is. This operation is called simple apprehension. Therefore, there are three operations of the intellect: simple apprehension, judgment, reasoning. These operations are so related to one another that the third presupposes the second, and the second presupposes the first. 15. The operation of the intellect, its products, and the external signs of the products. Just as in other arts, a distinction must be made between operations and the results of these operations, so in logic a distinction must be made between the operations of the intellect and the results of its operations. Example: in the building of a house, the vital operations of the builders are distinct from the product of their operations, the house. There could also be a sign to represent the house, for instance, a picture. Likewise, in the process by which the intellect inquires into the known truths, a distinction must be made between the operations of the intellect, their products, and the material signs by which these products are externally manifested. 16. Real definition of logic. Logic may be defined: the art which directs the very acts of reason and enables man to advance with order, ease, and correctness in the act of reason itself. A. Art: a rule of reason by which some of man's acts are directed. B. Directs the very acts of reason. Just as the art of architecture directs man's acts in the building of a house, so logic is the art which directs the very acts of reason, which constitute the matter with which logic deals. The acts of reason which logic directs are reasoning, judgment, and simple apprehension, as related to reasoning. However, logic does not direct the acts of reason by direct contact with them, but rather by arranging the products of reason. For example, concepts, propositions, and argumentations as representing known objects in their proper order. C. Enables man to advance with order. By this art, man properly and correctly resolves judgment and reasoning. In order to reason and to pass judgment, reason has recourse to resolution. It resolves judgment into its principles and examines the proofs by which it is manifested. Thus reason avers that the human soul is immortal, because the human soul is a spiritual substance. Therefore, the parts of logic which show how to engender a certain judgment through reasoning are called analytics by Aristotle. (17) Division of logic. In every art, there are two things which must be given special consideration, namely, the material or matter of which it treats, and the form given to this matter. In other words, in the construction of a house, wood and stone constitute the material, and the assembling of them into a definite structure constitutes the form. Likewise, in the art of logic, we must distinguish between its matter and form. Things or objects of which we wish to have actual knowledge, for example, things signified by concepts and propositions, are the matter of logic. Its form consists in that disposition of known objects that must obtain in order that true knowledge be attained. Thus in reasoning, which is the principal consideration of logic, we distinguish between the form, or disposition of concepts and propositions in virtue of which reasoning is said to be correct or incorrect, and the matter, or the things expressed by the concepts and propositions in virtue of which the conclusion of the act of reasoning is true or false. This may be illustrated by the following syllogism. Man is a donkey, but Peter is a man. Therefore, Peter is a donkey. This syllogism is correct as regards its form because the concepts and propositions are duly related. But its conclusion is not true because the syllogism is defective in its matter. It is not true that man is a donkey. Logic considers both the form and the matter of concepts and propositions. It is therefore divided into A. Formal logic, B. Material logic. Formal logic is defined. The part of logic which teaches what must be the disposition of concepts and propositions required for correct reasoning. Material logic is defined. The part of logic which teaches what the content and mode of expression of concepts and propositions must be in order that the conclusion of reasoning be true.